Hi all, this is Joe Glass, comic book creator, and welcome to my new channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing comic books released as of 13th of January 2021. So it's just a handful of books which I've read this week, which I've really enjoyed. I'm going to admit it's a DC heavy weekend because Future State continues, and Future State continues to be really interesting and really fantastic stuff. So without further ado, let's kick into it. First up, I read Future State Dark Detective from Mariko Tamaki, Dan Mora, with Jordie Bellaire on colours and Aditya Bidikar doing the lettering. It's superb. It's another great book. It's got multiple stories in it again. I imagine this is going to be one of the chunkier ones of them. I had to read it digitally, so I don't have a physical copy to judge, but I'm going to guess it's like the Batman one from last week. So yeah, again, the biggest element with two great stories in it. But let's start with the main story. Mariko Tamaki's story is obviously following Bruce Wayne, who is very much on his last ebb. He's down on his luck. He's actually wounded when we see him. This is Batman at his lowest point, and she writes it incredibly well. Obviously, Batman at his lowest point is not necessarily something we haven't seen before, but here it feels a little bit different and has its own flavour. We kind of get the impression that Bruce is really going through it mentally as well as physically, and it shows through the way the story is told through its various narrative captions. The artwork from Dan Mora is just gorgeous. I mean, like, it's really hard to really say anything about his work because everything he draws is absolutely beautiful. I've yet to come across anything from him which is in any way bad. It's incredibly clear. It has a fantastic sort of energy to it, and the detail is astonishing. The action elements really stand out because they have this almost John Wick feel to them. Like, there's one moment where Bruce is punching someone in the gut, and the way that the arm is drawn has such energy and movement into it, you practically feel it. Jordie Bellaire's colours are absolutely astounding, as they always are, again. They managed to fill in the sort of dark aspects of the future Gotham with these neon pops and colours which really bring to mind Blade Runner. So it kind of gives that idea of a Blade Runner LA future is what Gotham's becoming. It kind of has that nice little intermediary step element to it through the colouring choices and some of Dan Mora's design work of Gotham between what we know Gotham to be currently in DC continuity to what we expect it to be in Batman Beyond. So it kind of has that nice intermediary step element to it. Aditya's lettering again is superb. Each character kind of really feels like they have their own voice to it, in that each sort of speech balloon sort of looks and feels different, so you kind of almost hear the voices differently in your head. It works really well at giving that story impression across. The backup story was written by Matthew Rosenberg with art by Carmine Di Giandomenico, I hope I got that right, with colours by Antonio Fabula, and it's great. It's honestly superb. I want a whole book of this now, like DC, seriously, don't wait, just do it now. It's absolutely superb. Mariko Tamaki's story as the main story was absolutely superb too, so I'm so glad that you've already given her a book to go forward, and that it's Detective Comics. But honest to God, a grifter book from Matthew is something we need immediately. Matthew's done an excellent job of writing a charming human disaster. Oddly enough, Matthew seems to have had quite a run of these lately, and every time they've been brilliant, and Grifter really feels brilliant in his own right. I'm not particularly familiar with the character of Cole Cash, but like, I really didn't care. I immediately fell in love. I want to know more now. So for new readers, this the whole thing is a great hook, but like Grifters, which is in the story, is particularly going to hook you, I think, because you really don't need to know anything about him before, because I certainly didn't, and I loved it. I want more. The artwork is absolutely incredible. It's possibly the cleanest and smoothest I've ever seen from this artist, and it works excellent with the story that's going through, because like I said, a lot happens, so to have it so sort of clean and smooth works really well. That being said, it's still got tons of energy. The action sequences throughout really feel like they sort of got weight to them, so it's really well done for that. Like, and the facial expressions on the characters really feels like some top-notch character acting in the artwork, because you genuinely sort of get the sort of buddy cop elements between Cole Cash Grifter and another character who appears, which I won't spoil. So it's really sold through the artwork there. Fabella's colours are superb throughout. They sort of have these nice vivid flourishes in a essentially very gritty world. which makes everything just kind of pop and stand out. As I said right at the start of talking about this book, I want a whole series of this immediately. DC, seriously, give this to me. It is absolutely gorgeous, and also like the writing and the pacing is so superb. I need a whole series of this. You need to do this. Next up is Future State Superman Wonder Woman. This is written by Dan Watters, who presents a great story which has this very classic superhero storytelling feel to it, while still being exceptionally modern. Like the actions which actually happen in story feel like a very modern scenario. However, the pacing and the way characters are interspersed actually feels very much like a classic superhero story from the Silver Age. So it's got a really interesting sort of dynamism going on between it. I'll also admit that this story actually had some of the character elements I was kind of expecting to see in Wonder Woman, which I didn't get in the Wonder Woman book. That's not to say that Wonder Woman book by itself was not good or less in any way. It was perfectly fantastic as it was. But this story element just gives me something a little bit more of what I was expecting. I was getting to see a bit of a world which I was not familiar with. And that was what I hoped whenever I see a new character, is that I'm going to see a world I'm not particularly familiar with. Yara Flor's world is something a little bit different. It does present a lot of things which I've never certainly seen or read about before, so like I say, I'm very interested to see how it goes forward. Dan actually has a great way of using the character voices so that they actually kind of sound grounded and over the top all at once, which kind of also links into that idea of a modern yet somehow Silver Age superhero story connected all together. The artwork is by Leila Del Luca and is gorgeous. The line work isn't exactly DC house style, and that's kind of why I loved it. The characters felt really interesting and new in and of themselves. There's some really brilliant action pacing throughout the story as well. There's an opening section where we're introduced to Yara Flor, where she rescues a falling helicopter, which is really expertly done through the panel usage. Nick Filardi's colours work really well with DeLuca's artwork. It kind of gives that vividness of a Saturday morning cartoon again, which really works really well with this particular story. Obviously this story is serious, it's kind of got that maturity to it, but also is accessible to pretty much all ages, I'd say. Really does feel like you are getting an entertaining bit of story to really just fill your time. The last DC book I'm going to review this week is actually going to be Future State Justice League. The main story is the main Justice League story, which is written by Joshua Williamson. I gotta admit, I was not entirely sold on the idea of the new rules coming into this book, of the idea that the Justice League would no longer fraternize with each other, but it's actually against the rules, that they're mandatory secret identities. And like, I didn't necessarily know that I was going to be into that. And then Joshua did the story and it's brilliant. I'm actually fully behind it now, because it adds this element of soap opera style drama which works really well in the superhero format. The characters are, without giving too many spoilers away flouting these rules somewhat, and as a result it's kind of interesting. You immediately then become hooked into the new characters in particular, because you now have this sort of weigh-in element of them. They're doing something a little bit against the rules. In fact, the way the interpersonal relationships are utilised in this story is incredibly skillful and well done. There's a lot of new characters who we know nothing about, but I immediately was interested. Between Andy Curry and the new Flash, I was immediately interested in what their deal was. And it was done primarily from showing their interactions with each other, which we also know were kind of illicit. So it's kind of really interesting way of doing that there, and now I'm like fully on board with those aspects of the story. The other main thing I would say is there were some genuinely surprising twists in this, so I won't really give too much away about the story, other than say you should really get it, particularly if you're a Justice League fan, and particularly if you're a long time Justice League fan. Although this story is a great jumping on point and interesting for new readers, you will find that if you've been reading Justice League for a very long time, that there's going to be some really interesting elements here for you. Pencils are by Robson Roca, with the inking done by Romulo Fajardo Jr. It's great, clear storytelling. It has a slightly dark edge to it, which works with the story and the setting that they're in. It's really just generally great classic superhero artwork. There's a great use of paneling throughout, which sort of breaks down the story as well and shows you the various different characters in their own situations. So like I say, it really leads to a nice big reveal, which works really well. The backup story is Justice League Dark. Written by Ram V, the story is a nice counterpoint to the main Justice League story. While the Justice League story felt like a superhero, classic superhero story with its modern tinge, this feels like a darker superhero story. The situation is a little bit more grim compared to the main story. but it's done in such a really beautiful and poetic way. There is mystery elements still largely with this one. There's a lot more mystery, I'd say, built up around the Justice League Dark situation, and a lot more intrigue, which I'm sort of got keen to get my hooks into, but generally worked as a fantastic counterpoint to the main story. I think this is a great use of this whole DC's backup sort of idea, is to have stories which kind of counterpoint each other, or because that works really well, you get a much wider presentation of what's possible. So yeah, I really enjoyed that too. Marcio Takaro's art fits really well in this world. It creates a looming sense of dread throughout, which works exceptionally well. It's kind of surprising because I think a lot of the artwork I've seen of his tends to be quite brightly coloured, and sort of has that sort of positive energy to it, whereas here we're seeing a slightly darker turn, and that there's a possibility there of, you know, bad times ahead, etc. Works really well with the general sort of occult themes of Justice League Dark. So like I say, I highly recommend it. The overall book is just superb. Next up, we go over to Image and read Homesick Pilots issue 2, which is yet again written by Dan Watters, and the story just continues to be something immediately interesting and different. I can't say I've ever read anything quite like it, and it really, really does just blow me away. It's really interesting because this is a second issue which did not go where I expected it to go. And the fact that it's continuing to do these unexpected things, even in just the second issue, is just wild to me. Artwork is by Caspar Wingard, lettering by Didier Bidkar. The artwork is gorgeous. Like, Caspar's doing some of the work of his career here, which is astonishing to me because just last year I was saying the same about another book he was on. And now here we are with Homesick Pilots, and it's just stepped up another grade. Issue 2 continues to wow me with a brilliant use of colouring, which feels not opposed to the content of the story, but not necessarily where your mind would immediately have gone to. So the story has elements which can be quite dark, but the story doesn't look dark. And it kind of adds to this 90s vibe which the book goes for. Aditya's lettering kind of does the same. It's brilliantly done. There's colouring choices throughout the lettering itself, which again continues to make characters feel like each has their own voice. So it creates this general 90s grungy, like neon vibe to it, which really adds for an overall package which is just absolutely gorgeous. I'm so excited for this series. I cannot even tell you. I honestly think everyone should be reading it. If you're not already, I would say get a call into your local comic shop, get it on your pull list, because honestly I think it's going to be superb as a whole series. I'm completely sold on this already, and I need more. Moving back into the big two, we're now doing Marvel, and this time I'm going to review another second issue, which is in fact Sword issue 2. This is written by Al Ewing with art by Valerio Schiti, colours by Marte Gracia and Ariana Mea on the letters, and the team all works together brilliantly. We've already seen their work together on the Empire event of 2020, and the work they do together just continues to wow. I've never seen such a cohesive team creating something so cohesively brilliant and visually stunning to look at. It is yet another comic which continues to surprise in just its second issue. I was immediately sort of kind of blown away by the fact that this story did not go where I was expecting it to go. It's worth noting that Al's dealing with yet another tie to the King in Black event, which is running in Marvel at the moment. And yet he does this in such a superb way in that it continues to tell Sword's story while touching on this wider element of what is going on in King in Black. So if you're not reading the King in Black event, what are you doing? But if you're not, you could read Sword and it's not going to take away. You're actually still going to get your own sort of story in and of itself. And design work in this is absolutely gorgeous. Felicia's going out through the roof with some incredible artwork yet again. And yet again, Marty's colours shine through, giving everything a nice weighty feel to it so that everything feels real, lived in, and just kind of like full. I don't know, like I'm really awful, I gotta admit, of describing colouring. Like it just looks complete, like it just looks beautiful. Ariana's lettering is clear and infused with character, and each character sort of has its own like little elements which are like neat little ticks to how their lettering is done. In fact, there's a Venom / Null character whose lettering is gorgeous. Like I saw it and I was just like, oh, I love that. Like, it's absolutely amazing. So that's all the books I'm going to review in this video today. I will say this week actually had numerous great releases. There's some really great comics out this week, which, you know, was too many for me to do in a video, as I have my own books to be writing as well. But I'd definitely say you should check out books like Immortal Hulk, Seven Secrets, Marauders, and even The Union were really great books which I enjoyed this week. So yeah, check them out too. I'm going to try and put links to every comic I've reviewed in the description below, so feel free to check those out. Obviously those will be primarily digital comic releases. If you want physical copies, get in touch with your local comic book store. I'll put the local comic shop finder link below as well. I'm also going to be running a Kickstarter in a couple of weeks time, so I'll put a Kickstarter link to that down below. You can actually hit a landing page where you can hit a notify me on launch button, which will send you an email as soon as the campaign begins. As ever, if you've enjoyed the video and the reviews, please hit the like button, drop me a comment, and if you want to see more, then continue to subscribe to Joe Glass Comics. Yeah, again, we'll catch you next week with some more comic book reviews. So thanks for checking this video out. Love you.